Welcome to Contradicting the Cosmos, the show where I refute the YouTube atheist, the Cosmic Skeptic. In today's episode, Mr. Cosmic is going to try and disprove the Kalam cosmological argument. Let's begin.
Now, Frank Turek, who we've encountered before on this channel, has had this contention put to him on more than one occasion, and he attempts to get around it by claiming that whatever it was that caused the universe had to be some kind of personal being, because it had to make a choice in creating the universe. Here's a clip from one of his videos called From the Kalam to the Biblical God.
And then also personal. Why does the being need to be personal? Because in order to make a choice, which is what you have to do in order to go from a state of nothingness to a state of creation, you have to be a person.
But Turek and others like him fail to consider the fact that consciousness is not always needed as a driving force behind something happening. I mean, does a leaf choose to fall off of a tree?
The leaf already exists. The tree and gravity and wind all already exist for that to happen. Going from nothing to something requires a choice. Because we're not just talking about something that came into being itself. We're talking about something that's always been, eternally. In order for Cosmic Skeptic to get around this, he would probably have to say that the laws of physics did not apply before the universe was created, because an object at rest tends to stay at rest, unless acted on by an outside force. So the force that created the universe, if it was not a personal being making a choice, then it would have had to been acted on by an outside force. And then we have the infinite regression. If you want to avoid an infinite regression, then you need to recognize the fact that the creator of the universe is an intelligent, personal force able to make choices.
But even if you could prove that there was some kind of consciousness behind the universe, Turek still makes no link as to why this would need to be a personal god. I mean, who's to say this god would still be around? Who's to say that it cares about humans or intervenes in worldly affairs? And for that matter, who's to say that it would be one god? Why not some kind of polytheistic council? And who's to say that it's not some kind of evil god with evil intentions? The list is unending. This argument offers absolutely no specificities on the nature of this prime mover.
Nor is it supposed to. In fact, let's see what Frank Turek has to say in the rest of the clip that you didn't show.
And then also personal. Why does the being need to be personal? Because in order to make a choice, which is what you have to do in order to go from a state of nothingness to a state of creation, you have to be a person. Gravity, an impersonal force, has no power to make a choice. So if you've got a spaceless, timeless, immaterial, powerful, personal, also intelligent. Why? Again, intelligence is necessary to make a choice. So you've got a being that appears to be a theistic God to create space, time, and matter. Now, it doesn't have to be the Bible or the biblical God. I think when you go further through the evidence, you realize it is the biblical God. But from the cosmological argument alone, you get a being consistent with the biblical God.
Yep, that's right. Frank Turek agrees. The Kalam cosmological argument is not supposed to get you to a specific God. And it is incredibly intellectually dishonest of Mr. Cosmic to try and claim that it's a bad argument because it doesn't do so. The argument does what it is intended to do so. The conclusion being, therefore, the universe had a cause.
Look, this whole argument exists for the sake of it being impossible for there to be an infinite regress of causation. But is that really an impossibility? I mean, to be sure, our observable universe did have a beginning. The Big Bang did happen. I mean, you can actually see it with the right kind of telescope. Now, theists often point to the Big Bang and say, well look, here's the beginning of everything in existence. There must have been some kind of cause behind it. But hold on, because the Big Bang has never claimed to be the beginning of everything. Rather, it's only ever claimed to be the beginning of everything that we know of. Perhaps there were universes before ours. Perhaps the death of one universe is the Big Bang of the next, and this could be some kind of infinite chain. Perhaps there's a multiverse, and not even a multiverse of separate entities, but maybe one large, infinitely large fabric in which there are sort of localized areas of activity, one of which is our observable universe, which did have its own beginning. There's simply no way for us to know. Aquinas, Craig, and Turek alike assume some kind of singular grand beginning to not only our universe, but anything that does, will, and can exist. And there's simply no proof to back this up.
The proof is in entropy. There is a finite amount of usable energy in the universe. So none of the options Mr. Cosmic laid out there are feasible because our universe just does not have the energy for it. You'll notice at the beginning of the clip, he tries to claim that infinite regression is possible, but then very quickly changes the subject because he knows he can't prove it. He just has to assert it as a possibility and move on. His entire argument boils down to an appeal to ignorance, basically saying, you can't prove infinite regression is impossible, therefore it must be possible. It is ironic that atheists will spout off rhetoric like, scientists love to be proven wrong, because that's how the scientific method works. But they are so afraid of being proven wrong that they appeal to ignorance, just so they can avoid being proven wrong. It's the same thing when they claim that they can't be absolutely certain about anything. They are afraid of being proven wrong, so they don't want to take a hard stance on anything, especially if they think they can be proven wrong about it. Now, of course, that's exaggerating a bit. They do take some hard stances, but as you can see here, when faced with a logically unavoidable conclusion that goes against their worldview, they retreat into the veil of ignorance.
There's a lot that we don't know about the laws of physics. There's probably a lot that we can't know about the laws of physics. I mean, let's not forget that we are constrained to one single universe. There's no way for us to compare it with any others. We can test things within the universe because we can make control variables when we have more than one example of the thing that we're trying to test. But we shouldn't be so naive to assume that everything that applies to things within the universe also applies to the universe itself. To do so is to commit the fallacy of composition, and this is one of Bertrand Russell's prime objections to the Kalam cosmological argument. Here's an example of the logic. No atoms are alive, therefore nothing made of atoms is alive. You can see the problem here. Now, this isn't to say that this logic doesn't work sometimes. There's a good example from carneades.org, I'll link in the description, of a brick wall. Okay, suppose we had a brick wall of which all of the bricks were red. Does that mean that the wall itself is red? Well, yes, of course it does. But suppose we said that every brick was small. Does that mean that the wall itself was small? Well, no. Just because the bricks are small doesn't mean the wall itself is small. Just because everything within the universe has a cause doesn't mean the universe itself has a cause.
Let's actually try and follow the breadcrumbs Mr. Cosmic is laying out and see where it leads. He's trying to make you believe that the universe as a whole could begin to exist without a cause. Just try and imagine that. What would that look like? A universe popping into existence without a cause. To make this paradox more clear, imagine a woman going back in time and becoming her own mother. Now, remove time travel from the equation. It is not possible. And of course, this is not the fallacy of composition. He explained it right, but he's using it wrong. The argument is that everything that begins to exist has a cause. Not everything in the universe that begins to exist has a cause. This statement applies to everything. Absolutely everything. It's not based on our observances, everything that begins to exist has a cause. It's based on logic. Everything that begins to exist has a cause.
It's important to recognize here that we're not saying that there was definitely no cause behind the universe, or if there was, that it definitely wasn't a god. Okay, it's the theist that's making an active claim, and we're simply trying to rebut it. This series, this Arguments for God series, is a series of rebuttals, not a series of arguments, okay, because the burden of proof does not lie with the atheist. But with that out of the way, let's conclude with a summary of the Kalam cosmological argument. So here goes. Everything that begins to exist has a cause. I believe that there was a beginning, not only to everything within the observable universe, but to that universe itself and everything that does, can, and will ever exist. Therefore, there must have been some kind of prime mover, and that prime mover was obviously the god of the religion in which I happen to have been brought up. Checkmate, atheists.
And there he goes trying to shift the burden of proof. The atheists do have a burden of proof. In this particular video, the burden is to prove that the Kalam argument is unsound. But you cannot do that by appealing to ignorance. Let's use an example of something we both agree on, that the Earth is a ball, a sphere. Premise 1. Gravity pulls all matter in to a ball shape. Premise 2. The Earth has gravity. Conclusion. Therefore, the Earth is a ball, not flat. Now that is a good argument which I believe is both valid and sound. But what would the flat earther say if he was arguing like the Cosmic Skeptic? He might say something like, you don't know that gravity always pulls things into a ball shape. In fact, he might even say, you can't even know the moon is round. I mean, spherical. Since we've never seen the backside of it, gravity may only affect Earth, and everything else is just orbiting that gravity. Or any other hypotheticals that a flat earther may come up with. If you want to claim that the Kalam cosmological argument is unsound, then the burden is on you to prove it without appealing to ignorance.